If you're tuning in, you're questioning the narrative and yearn for clarity. Welcome. This podcast explores diverse topics, dedicated to unraveling truths with insights from special guests and experts.
Welcome back to You Have Been Hoodwinked. It is your host, Maya the Bee. Thank you for tuning in. The last few shows have been about Diddy and all this crazy stuff that we've been seeing in the news recently. Again, we've heard things about Diddy in the past. The violence against women is newer to me. I don't remember hearing a lot about those incidences as much as like the homosexual kind of and sex party stuff. But it's all aligning. Everything's coming together now. We've got video footage confirming, because people need to see things to believe them. So we'll see how this whole thing plays out. But for today's show, something completely different. And where this came from is me and my dad, we always talk about conspiracies and things that, as we get older, we learn are completely untrue. And it's really just, it's harrowing, just knowing how much we've been lied to. And in the past, conspiracy theorists have been looked at as like cuckoo and nuts. But hey, joke's on you. Y'all are the cuckoo and nuts ones. You guys are listening to what the government is telling you to do like a bunch of idiots. And I'm in that group too. Believe me, I'm slowly unraveling these lies and trying to, move forward in my own truth. And with what I can find out through research, that's the best you can do in this life. There's so many lies, so many things going on, from this organic fruit and produce lie. Now, I just saw this whole expose. I'll talk about this later, but about Whole Foods. Ever since Amazon bought them, they've really declined. They were declining before that, in my opinion. Just like most big chains, the quality just goes down. But evidently, they're shipping organic frozen vegetables that are made in China, and our country has no system on, I guess, approving that these are, or validating that these are actually organic. They just don't do anything. They're just like, yeah, sure, if China wants to say they're organic, that's fine. Fun times. So I'll be decoding America and other myths and things that we've just been told to believe over the years, and now we're finding out that it's not true. So me and my dad, he had told me about this Time magazine article he read in the 1980s, I think he said. And it was about how the American car industry all got together, like the big car makers got together after World War II, and basically came up with the idea that let's not make cars to last, because we want people to continue to be buying the new models. Of course, they put all the new bells and whistles on these new models every year, so you feel kind of compelled to buy anyway these days. But back in that time, cars are still semi-new. And whatever you could basically do to get people, into cars faster, these companies will do. While Japan was making Toyota's cars to last, our country decided, hey, these big car makers got together and said, we're going to not make the quality that great. Let's use parts that are going to need to be replaced. So all of this feeds into each other. The maintenance part, you need the, You need the pieces, the equipment to fix your car. Some people get fed up when they have too much maintenance. They just go get another car. That would be really crazy. It was hard for me to find that article online because, I'm sure it got buried somewhere, because who would think that company like GM and Ford, they would come together to create this pact that nobody would create cars that could last more than 10 years. That's just insane. Like, let's cheat the American public and their hard-earned money. It's so crazy to me. All right, so since I couldn't really find too much on that specific article, because I really wanted to learn more, like, is that, because now I believe that's true. These companies are coming together. If they can help each other with profit, they're going to do it, even if they're competitors. Today's discussion explores the scandalous history of General Motors and other corporations like Firestone, who covertly conspired to undermine public transit. This is crucial to understand because it reveals yet another instance where corporate greed has manipulated public systems for profit. So, trains and trolleys, they've been out in America since 1827. And that's according to Association of American Railroads. Trains were the backbone of American transit during the golden age of railroads from the 1880s to the 1920s. Then the emergence of automobiles comes along. Cars began gaining popularity in the U.S. after the Ford Model T was introduced in 1908 by Henry Ford. General Motors, GM, was founded in 1908 by William Durant. He also had several other motor car companies, including Buick, Cadillac, Oldsmobile, and Oakland, which was later known as Pontiac. The first car produced by GM was in 1908, and it was a Cadillac. By 1920, in the United States, there were over 8 million car registrations, and this number nearly tripled to 23 million by the end of that decade. So from 1920 to 1930, 23 million cars. Wow, on the road. Initially, cars were seen as unreliable and mostly toys for the wealthy, like most gadgets when they come out. But as they became more affordable, they started to gain traction among the general public. Despite their growing popularity, mass transit systems, primarily trains and streetcars, remained the dominant mode of transportation. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about this company called National City Lines. You've probably never heard of this, because I've never heard of this company. But let me give you a little history on it. In 1945, National City Lines, NCL, purchased the Pacific Electric Streetcar Company and began converting streetcar lines across the country to bus lines. But was there a deliberate push to make cars more widely adopted? Indeed. The strategy was not just about promoting a new product, but about making the existing mode of transportation less appealing. I just want to, one more time, repeat that. It was not just about promoting a new product, but about making the existing mode of transportation less appealing. So, for example, LA used to be a huge trolley town, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit is actually about that. That's the backdrop of the story. Christopher Lloyd is Judge Doom, and he's the one that's planning these super highways and getting rid of trolley lines. And essentially, that's what they did. LA There's footage of this online, but what they did, and in many other big cities, is they start diminishing the service of those trolleys. So then it becomes unreliable to people. And then people don't want to take them because they're like, hey, I can't get to work if this isn't going to come here every day at this specific time. So they purposely made the service unreliable. The cars were not being taken care of. So people naturally are going to look for a more reliable mode of transportation. So where does that push them? Cars. And then buses. Both cars and buses require the same type of manufacturing in the same type of facilities. So GM actually makes buses, and they also make automobiles. So start putting the pieces together. Let's talk about the conspiracy here. To make cars and buses more attractive, GM and its partners undertook a covert strategy. Because again, a lot of people didn't know that GM was even a part of this company. They formed NCL, whose purpose was to buy trolley and streetcar lines. That is the purpose of this company. Once these lines were under their control, they systematically reduced the service quality, causing communities to perceive these transit modes as unreliable. This deterioration in service nudged people towards buses and cars, both of which GM produces, coincidentally. Supported by essential supplies from Firestone and Phillips Petroleum. So Phillips 66, you've probably seen those gas stations. Firestone makes tires. What do cars and buses need? Gas and tires. So it would only make sense that these companies would unionize in their own way and corner or monopolize the market. Let's go further into this. So from 1938 onwards, NCL entered into exclusive deals and secured funding from companies aiming to boost sales of buses and related supplies. This allowed NCL to buy over 100 electric streetcar systems in 45 cities, including Cleveland, Detroit, Los Angeles, New York, Oakland, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, and Tulsa. By 1946, NCL controlled streetcar operations in 80 American cities. GM's strategic dismantling of streetcar systems nationwide was a calculated move to dominate the transportation market with cars and buses. This scandal not only reshaped Americans' urban landscape, but also highlighted the profound impact of corporate interests on public infrastructure and the everyday lives of citizens. Now tell me, do you think this is fair? Did you even know this? Another moment in history where I've been hoodwinked. I personally have been hoodwinked. Because then I think about the pollution that we've done to this country. Again, not saying that trains at that time were not polluting, but at least it was one train versus millions of cars on the road. One city in particular that I lived in for 4 years has suffered immensely from cars and buses being on the road. And that's Los Angeles. Los Angeles is so polluted, it's hard to breathe. The air quality is almost always poor. The only time it was good was during the pandemic, and it was amazing. You could actually see the city. The smog had raised. It was so amazing to see, wow, this is what it could be like without all these cars. So look at what the car industry did to our planet, to our communities, because they just wanted to make money. They took out a completely healthy mass transit system so they could put more of their own products on the road. And they went so far that they intricately went behind our backs and bought up all these systems without anyone doing a damn thing. However, people caught on, and there were some people that fought against this. So let's get into that, because I'm going to play some clips for you. The mayor of San Francisco, he barked back so hard in this meeting with some important, I guess, political figures. And he talked about the importance of having a diverse transportation kind of system for metropolitan cities, not just one type. So if you have some people walking, you have some people biking, you have some people in cars, you have some people on mass transit, that's everything in moderation. But when everyone's in cars, it completely pauses the entire grid, if you think about it. The streets are jammed up, it's locked up, nobody can get through. So imagine if New York City had no public transit and it was only cars. It would be impossible to get in and out. Impossible. It'd probably take 5 hours just to get from the top to the bottom of New York, of Manhattan. It's just upsetting. When I think about it, I'm like, these fucking people, like from the beginning of time, there's been exploitation and just trying to expose it to ride on the weaknesses of people not knowing. That's the worst. Is like, you're going to hide it until it's been exposed. You're going to move in the shadows until the light is shined on you. And it's just disgusting. All right, so let's keep going here, because that's just, the beginning of that story. I want to tell you all a little bit more about the antitrust lawsuit that was filed in 1947. So the United States government files an antitrust lawsuit against GM, Firestone, Standard Oil, and other corporations involved with NCL. The lawsuit accuses them of conspiring to monopolize the sale of buses and related supplies to the local transit companies controlled by NCL. GM and the partners are found guilty of conspiring to monopolize the market for buses and related supplies. However, they are acquitted of conspiring to dismantle and monopolize the streetcar system, even though they did this. And that was the purpose of the company's formation. They were acquitted. And listen to these penalties. And I get it, it's 1949, but still, it seems like nothing. So GM is fined $5,000, and the individual executives that are involved are fined $1 each. What kind of message does that send? That you can do whatever the hell you want in this country. That's the message that it sends. So, through the 1950s, the transition from streetcars to buses continues. Again, still driven by NCL. Many American cities in the 1950s also have significantly reduced or entirely dismantled their streetcar systems in favor of buses and automobiles. So we're like catching this wave because we're told, hey, these streetcars are failing you. We need to keep the public infrastructure, moving and working. So use this instead. So you think they're solving a problem for us? No, they created a bigger problem with our environment. The legacy of NCL's actions become more apparent as urban transportation networks are increasingly dominated by buses and cars. The long-term impact includes increased urban sprawl, greater dependence on automobiles, and the decline of public transit infrastructures in many areas. This is by the 1960s. So now, at this point, cars have been around for 50 years. Then in the 1970s, there was a reassessment and public transit revival. So there becomes this need for like what's going on. We need better public transit. So rising awareness of environmental issues and urban congestion, aka traffic, leads to a reevaluation of public transit. Some cities even begin to reinvest in rail and streetcar systems. Then in the 1980s to 2000s, again, people are still wanting public transit, including light rail and streetcars. In present day, the history of GM and NCL's role in dismantling streetcar systems is often cited in discussions about public transit, urban planning, and corporate influence on infrastructure, which I'm really glad that this story is talked about still. Because if it was up to GM and NCL, they'd love to sweep this up under the rug, you know? So it's important that we keep talking about this and we don't allow things like this to happen. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that GM pushed and some of the initiatives that NCL pushed during this span of decades, that they were, they were pushing this agenda to replace, streetcars with buses and get more cars on the road. All right. So in an effort to get more cars on the road, these car makers like GM and this group like NCL realized, well, we need more roads in order to connect people, because railroads were connecting people. There weren't roads in a lot of areas. So they had something called the Highway Trust Fund, and it was established by the Highway Revenue Act of 1956. And the purpose is to finance the construction and maintenance of the U.S. interstate highway system and other roads and bridges. And the fund is, what they're telling everyone, it's critical for supporting federal and state highway projects. The funding sources, let me tell you where it comes from. So the primary source of revenue is federal excise taxes on gasoline and diesel fuel. Additional revenue comes from the taxes on heavy trucks, truck tires, and truck-related equipment. By the way, Mack Trucks was also part of NCL. Then in 1982, mass transit was added to this Highway Trust Fund. So it supports public transportation, but this is only in 1982. And this was after people fought against this Highway Trust Fund. They wanted the money to be able to be used for public transportation as well. So National City Lines overview. Again, NCL's activities contributed to the decline of streetcar systems and the rise of bus and automobile dominance in urban transportation. The long-term effects. The shift from rail to road transit has lasting impacts on urban development, environmental issues, and public transportation infrastructure. All right, I just wanted to know what ChatGPT had to say if with this command. I asked, what would our planet be like if cars were never developed and we relied solely on trains for ground transportation? And of course, the world would be significantly different in several key aspects. And let's go through this, because some of this stuff was like really enlightening to me. Cities would be most likely denser, more compact. Urban areas would develop around train stations, which we can see in our metropolitan cities like New York, leading to greater emphasis on walkability and public transit. Imagine if we had to walk a little more. Maybe we wouldn't be so fat. Public spaces. So more land would be available for parks, public spaces, and communal areas rather than parking lots and highways. Suburban and rural areas. How would this affect them? So transit-oriented development for suburban and rural areas would be designed around rail lines. Environmental impact. This is obviously one of the most important factors if cars never existed. Reduced emissions, of course, lower pollution. The absence of cars would lead to significantly lower greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution, contributing to cleaner air and less climate change impact. Also, efficient land use. Less land would be consumed by roads and highways, preserving more natural landscapes and reducing habitat fragmentation. Energy consumption, so sustainable energy. Trains, particularly electric ones, are more efficient than cars. A train-based transportation system could more easily transition to renewable energy sources, further reducing environmental impacts. Let's talk about some economic and social factors. Greater investment in rail infrastructure could drive economic growth, creating jobs and fostering technological advancements in rail systems. Cost savings. This is for our regular people that live in America. Households would save money on transportation costs without the need to purchase, maintain, fuel, insure personal vehicles. And insurance is another scam in this country. Social equity. Trains provide a more equitable form of transportation, accessibility for people at all income levels, reducing social disparities related to mobility. That is something that is so true in New York, and what I love is because you would see a billionaire on a New York transit line, or you would see homeless people. It was such a mix of, hey, everyone's just trying to get to where they're trying to get to, and that's it. And it was the moment where everyone was almost like equal. We're all equal in this train. We're just trying to get somewhere. And so I can see, how that kind of creates like, it's no longer, oh, I'm driving a Lamborghini to work, so I'm really important, versus the person that might be walking or riding a bike. So I really like that. And these days, you're like smarter if you're riding a bike or walking to work. Some of the negatives might be longer commutes. People might have to, travel a little bit longer if they didn't have cars, but all the other benefits seem so worth having that just that in itself is not that bad. Like the active lifestyle, the culture shifts. People are gonna start becoming more down to earth when we're all kind of using the same things and the same modes to get places. It's no longer like, you're a status symbol because you have this or you have that, so there's a lot of benefits if we just as a community of humans said, hey, let's take care of our planet. We don't all need fancy cars and showing off who has what and this and that. Let's do something for the benefit of our humanity. Let's do something for our planet, but we don't think that way. And that's the scary part of this, of being alive and being a part of the human race, is the fact that so many people, this country, America, has been built on lies, and we thought it was the land of opportunity. No, it's the land of opportunity built on a fucking landfill, filled with trash, filled with dead bodies of people that lived here before us, and we just came in and bulldozed it. And it's so horrifying to me, like the evil that humans can do. Well, what makes this place livable is the hope, is the faith, is the belief that I know we can do better. I think we just need more people talking out about this stuff, because humans are magical. We can do such amazing things if we focus on good and what's good for the greater good, not for what's good for me and my family. That is not the way to think. We need to think more as a community, and then maybe we wouldn't be so driven to destroy in order to profit. because that's essentially what this company NCL did. So GM, General Motors, they're still in business to this day, took down the streetcar system. Like, that was their marketing ploy. Like, that's what they did. Imagine if it's like, a cereal company. That's why all these food companies own each other, because Rice Krispies and whatever Lucky Charms, I don't know if they're the same, but they can compete against each other and it's fine because the money is going to the same pocket at the end of the day. So one Cuban can say, oh, those are so bad for you, you should have grape nuts. Hey, guess what? Grape nuts is going to General Mills too. Again, I don't know if that's right. I do have a food episode coming up. All right, peeps. Well, now you know. If you didn't know before, GM was behind the assault on public transit. Go ahead and Google it. There's a bunch of different documentaries on this. If you Google it, Taken for a Ride is a really good one. That one I had watched over the weekend. There's tons of old articles from even older than this, but I was looking at things in the 1970s and 80s about predictions about what cars are going to do. And it's like, you assholes didn't listen. It's actually happening, it seems like we're just reactive here. We let people run amok and then we try to clean it up after it's completely fucked. But we're going to look at the glass half full. We can do it. We can completely turn this place around. This earth can be fixed. This earth can be saved. Humanity can be saved. Just continue to educate yourself. Again, Google things immediately. If you don't, if something's not sitting right with you, there's probably a reason. So make sure that you are constantly questioning things. I mean, not to the point where you're exhausted, because you can get completely burnt out from uncovering, all these different things that you were just told were true. It's just depressing. But try to stay in the light. Try to stay in the good part of humanity, the great part of our wonderful planet. There's so many wonderful things to celebrate here and so many great people and accomplishments we've done as humans. But then there's a lot of things that are just completely just disparaging. You're just like, wow. Anyway, y'all, I've talked a lot for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope something was stimulated in you that makes you want to go question something. If not, I still appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.
You have been hoodwinked.